magic of dance. It's absolutely fascinating, actually. I mean, obviously it's my world and that history is extraordinary, but the amount of footage on there of all these incredible dancers and these pas de deux and these duets and, you know, all these patois, all these amazing pieces from around the world, actually, of dancers that I've always heard about, but I had never seen the footage. So that was brilliant to see. And just how in depth it was over the history of dance, where it started, and that love and passion for it.
Magic isn't something that I can just take in my hands and show you. It's very capricious, not always where we expect to find it. Of course, theatre is one of its favorite haunts. That's why I love the theatre. And that's what I find in dance, not just ballet, any kind of
Margot
dance.
Fonteyn is known as our founding ballerina of British ballet. There were some other ballerinas, but I think she was the most celebrated, very much because her career was incredibly long, and she danced with some of the most famous male dancers, especially Nureyev, Rudolf Nureyev. And also she was just very spoken and daring, I think, for the times of a ballerina. She loved throwing herself into new works. She was used a lot in a lot of new creative works by Sir Frederick Ashton and other choreographers. And so she was kind of setting the scene for British dance and our skill and our style. So that's why she's so well remembered.
The last time I was here, I was 14 years old, beginning to feel rather grown up. And with such a whole life and career ahead, that would have seemed like the wildest fantasy of my imagination if I could have seen what was going to happen in the years to come.
There are quite a lot of standout moments. I think I was quite amazed to see how many people she had been interviewing, and I suppose one of them obviously is Fred Astaire, Sammy Davis Jr.
You know, I did take some tap lessons when I was a child, but I don't really know anything about it. Is tap jazz dancing, or is that something different?
Well, I wish I could answer that in very concisely, but I can't. I can demonstrate.
I can see him saying, I don't want to just do an interview. You've got to see me move, you know. And I just also what his strength was and his style of dancing and how he wanted to emphasize that and show it off. He specialized in that style of dance, his tap dancing, and we have now where dancers are expected to be very diverse with the amount of styles that they're meant to be able to deliver and be able to change from night to night, especially in big companies where from contemporary to classical dance and then, you know, something different altogether. And yeah, it's different demands on the dancer and their physicality nowadays. It was spectacular seeing him shuffle and his tap dancing and how subtle those details were. I wanted to see everybody do that, yeah. Baryshnikov in Spectre of the Rose, wonderful to see him in that. It's so pure, and because the choreography is quite old, but it doesn't look like it when you see him perform it. One of the beautiful things is seeing Nijinsky's daughter talk about watching her father perform and what she remembers of his performances, because there wasn't any footage of him dancing. I mean, there's amazing photographs of him, but her memories of that were really touching, and she was so passionate about it, which was beautifully expressed.
I remember when I was 3 years old. Now, I remember the dress I wore at the Metropolitan Opera House. I was in a box on the right side of the stage. I remember the stage was flooded with moonlight, and it came from the right-hand side. And I remember my father moving from the right wing to the left wing in an enormous leap, and his arm was way up like this in a grand jeté.
I loved that Nijinsky was really testing the public, like it was in 1911 or something, you know, where there were riots outside the theatre because they were so shocked by the way he performed, how provocative it was. It was just so scandalous. So it was just so nice to know that ballet at that time was at the forefront of changing art, and it was kind of the thing that was shocking people, which I think we need to do a bit more of. There is also some wonderful footage of Isadora Duncan. She's at this party and she suddenly gets up to perform in front of all the guests. And there's only a tiny clip of that, but it's so revealing of her freedom and her expression.
No film was ever made of her dancing, so this inadequate fragment at a garden party in 1927, 2 years before she died, is all there is to show us the real Isadora.
There's also brilliant footage of Nureyev as a clown, literally hanging off, very acrobatic, hanging off like scaffolding in this amazing kind of solo, which he talks about as well, really describes it and how difficult it was and how interesting it was to work on that piece.
When I came to the West, the idea was not just here I am, the best, the greatest, or whatever it is, let me show them, but I came to learn. All modern choreographers, what they aim is really discovering a new way of moving, a new language.
Yes.
And of course they have, that language allows to delve into one's inner being. More complex things could be portrayed on stage.
I think with the magic of dance, what's fascinating is how Margot has chosen certain parts of the history of dance where she's picked out certain choreographers, certain styles, like the Italian and how they're virtuoso, and then the French courts, and then, of course, a lot of American influences about modern dance. So it was fascinating how she picks out those highlights that meant something to her and the influences it had on society. But also, I suppose, she was really looking at how dance was influenced by society as well, and how it was changing, and how people wanted to express themselves differently through movement. For the television to preserve archive like this is incredibly important. For it to be seen again and refreshed, I think, is incredibly important. I think, we look at dance in such a different way and how it engages and connects people. To know where it's actually come from has been so important, and its first influences and how it was developed, I think, is brilliant. And it also influences the next generation of choreographers, besides dancers, but to directors, to just see how the content that was being delivered then, so that we're not repeating ourselves. We've got to keep reinventing, and that's the reason for the art. It's got to really keep evolving and changing with the times. What is the magic of dance? I think there's so many things, because it's so subjective and it affects people in so many different ways. I think you could ask, 10 people and they'd all have a different answer for what the magic of dance is. I mean, for me, it's the feeling that it creates inside. I suppose that harmony between the music, the musicality, the skill, that respect of the work and detail that's gone into it. I find that just brilliant, to watch dancers with this extraordinary skill. But I suppose it's much more of how really it lifts you, how it changes how you feel. And you don't have to be a dancer to feel that either. By just watching dance, how it just fills every sense. I always love to feel that I feel really alive after I've watched somebody move beautifully to music. There's something that it awakens, something inside you. And I think that's, for me, what the magic of dance is. I feel alive to everything around me that's going on. Sometimes I express dance that it's like going through maybe 4 different weather patterns in one day. Sometimes dance has that ability to clear your mind, create clarity, but then beauty, and then strength, and then just all of these different emotions all come together when you watch great dance.